Okay, everyone, and welcome to our session today on integrating and appreciating Indigenous arts. And it's going to be the second session that we're offering as part of a four-part series at Learn that's focusing on projects and activities to help communities to help build sustainable and respectful relationships between Indigenous communities and educational communities. Um, so I guess before we dive into the session, I'll mention that it's being recorded. And I wanted to open today's session with a little activity that I'm going to call like gratitude word art. So I'm going to share my screen. Um, Here, I'll share my screen. And this will give some time for a few people to join us as we were expecting about 30 so people. Right, so I hope you can see my screen now. It works. And in the chat, I will drop the link to the Mentimeter. And so the idea behind this activity is that I decided to open our conversation today with this instead of a land acknowledgement because we're joining from all over the province. And I really wanted to honor some of the protocols that I have been learning about meaningful openings for gatherings. I've had a few people that I've met, educators from the Anishinaabe Nation and the Ganingahaga educators that have taught me a bit about honoring meetings with gratitude and starting with saying thanks, like the Ondino Dekwan, before we have important meetings. And I think that this morning is really important when we're gathering with educators, talking about what else we can do to support youth in our communities. So I'm going to ask that everybody, if you have time to open up the Mentimeter, or you can use the QR code, and that we can share something on the land that we're on today that you are grateful for, and think about that as we're heading into our session today. So I'll click on the next one. Okay. So you should see it, and I'll give a few minutes for people to input some of their answers, and I hope it works. I'm not used to sharing with Mentimeter, but I wanted to try something fun and different to create some little word art together. I don't see any yet. I wonder if I had to refresh.
We can enter three at a time
Okay.
before we submit, so.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Light, seasons, warmth, trees. Warm tea. I love that one. It's been really cold, so I am also feeling very grateful for warm coffee and tea on days like this. It's fresh air, blue sky, seasons, family. Amazing. Yeah. So the more I learn about these practices of opening, I really love it because I think just in our society today, it's always like constant consumption, and the idea of centering ourselves and like what we already have in the present, I think is a really beautiful way to open conversations about education. Yeah. Cool. I'll give a few minutes for those who are joining. I see a few people entering. We're just opening with some words of gratitude today. So if you want to take a minute to join the Mentimeter, you can use this code here, or I can try to put it in the chat again if I can navigate to my second screen successfully, so that you can share a word of gratitude today. Great. I saw another one come up. Sun, fresh air. Amazing. So I'll leave that up, and so people can enter a few more words if they want to. And while they're doing that, I just want to give a quick recap of our last session and then talk a bit about today's agenda. So as I said, this is our second session as part of a series. Our first session was really about what the importance of building ongoing relationships and about what truth and reconciliation is. And we showcase some different examples of projects that schools and communities are doing together in Quebec throughout the year to bring learning to their students. So, for example, we had a group at St. Michael's, I believe it was, present about restorative justice. We also had a wonderful, and Danielle, feel free to jump in, this wonderful group of like young women. I think they were partnering with her and Wendat Nation locally to explore and teach young females about a holistic perspective of the changes that were going on their body and the seasons and how that kind of coming of age, different practices related to that, which I thought was really beautiful. And so today, our idea is to explore appreciating and integrating Indigenous arts into educational spaces. So we're going to first hear from MC Snow and Robin, who are artists, a bit about their projects that they've collaborated on. And then we're going to hear from Mariah, who's going to share a bit of some of her art. And finally, we're going to hear from Sylvia Balick about different resources for appreciating and ways of appreciating Indigenous arts in schools and education. And then finally, we're going to end with just some time to build relationships and ask questions and discuss some of the learnings that we had today together. So that kind of sums up a bit of my introduction. I can close. Oh, I see health and a few while I was talking. Some wonderful ideas show up on the Mentimeter. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Danielle, I guess, to get us started to introduce our first speakers.
Good day on this winter day. Um, I, I'm happy to be here. I like looking at gratitude. That's a great lens to be reminded of. So yes, I'm happy to introduce MC Snow, and I also just want to say after MC, we're going to be hearing from Robin, who works at a school who MC was able to come and work with the students there. So thank you both for joining us and everyone else. Um, I came across MC Snow because of Robin. We do get to hear about all the great things happening in schools, but I always want to hear more because it's never enough when you just hear one sentence, and it's always great to hear from the person directly. And then I noticed MC Snow was on the Elan website. So we will send out that link later if anyone's looking for how to contact artists. That is one way. Robin will tell us how it worked on her in her school. So from what I know, MC Snow is an artist from Ganawagi
Yeah,
near
that's right.
Montreal,
Yeah.
and you're a multidisciplinary artist that you give workshops in
Uh-huh.
schools, colleges. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mostly well, exactly. I'm a professional artist and I do sculptural work in the city, and I also do small shows around town, and I work with the culture a lot, to try to keep our our indigenous arts and crafts alive and things like that. So, yeah. I do a lot of work in the schools with the students. That's one of the fun things I get to do. So I've been meeting a lot of teachers over the last couple of years, and it's really great to be invited into their schools and to meet their kids, and also especially when they have if they have like a small population of indigenous kids or native kids, it's great to meet them too, because I don't think it's too often that they have an indigenous instructor come in. So it's, a little bit, it's different, and I think it's nice to see. I remember when we had native instructors come into our schools when I was a kid, and I was always the only indigenous kid in the classroom. So when I would see other people, it was like, okay, yeah, some of us do become teachers, and that was always really inspiring to see other people doing this type of work. So I hope to inspire other kids to continue with their art or whatever it is their interests are. That was a mouthful. We can get into my slides if you want. I can
Sure.
with the slides. I brought some pictures of just things that I do at some of the schools with some of my students when I get to go share stuff. This one is at McGill, the first First People's House, I believe it was. I was also doing um, a residency there for a few months last year. So I got to meet a lot of the art students and the Indigenous students at McGill, and we had a chance to get together and do workshops. So one of the workshops that I did with them was the beadworking workshops, and there, the picture on the left, we have one of them who's making it's actually a really fancy piece that she's working on. That was one of my more advanced students. I guess she'd already done beadwork before because she was really good at it. And so we had like bigger projects to do with the older kids, with the university students. And then on the right, we sort of have an example of one of the things that I do with the smaller kids, the ones that are just beginning to learn how to thread a needle, how to use their scissors. That's basically as far as we get sometimes with these really young kids, but it's we get them into stringing the beads and thinking about color and patterns. So it's a good start for them, and I think it's important for them to know that these are cultural crafts that we've been doing for hundreds of years, and that before we had beads, we still did these crafts, using different types of uh, um, elements that we had at the time. Before the beads came over, we had porcupine quills and other natural objects that we'd use for embellishing our clothing. So it's something that carries on into and keeps evolving with time, and these arts and crafts are still evolving today. So I think it's good for them to learn a few things on their own too, because it helps them learn the history of the land that they're living on. And I think that the history of our people is should be something that's mandatory in all the schools, that they learn about the Indigenous history that was here, and I think that's being implemented more and more, which is great. Next. Okay, once again, these are my McGill students, and we were doing some leather crafts because besides beadwork, we also do some leather crafting. I would first try to come up with some age appropriate crafts, knowing the group that I'd be working with. Maybe I design a little bag that we could do, something that we could do in 2 hours. With the older students at McGill, we would get together for 3 hours a week for 8 weeks. So that gave us a good opportunity to make a bigger project like the moccasins that we see on the right here. So we were all able to finish a pair of moccasins by the end of the 8 week session. Next. Next slide. Okay, so this just on the left is a pair of moccasins that I make. That's just sort of an example of the things that I do on my own and for other people and craft shows and things like that. And on the right is a picture of some of my kids and of some of my friends' kids. We're at a powwow, and this is to show that on some occasions, like when I'm working for Artists Inspire, usually I go in and I work with a small group of kids, and on the last day, we'll do a special event. And sometimes I like to have some of my friends come in who are dancers, and we bring their kids along too. And then we're able to show them some of the social dances from our community, from Ganawage. So that's always fun. It's a fun, different type of thing to do where we can get, sometimes the whole school involved. And it's really great. Next. Okay, this is a close-up of one of the elements. We did a big mural. Me and another artist got together on this project, and it was also with Artists Inspire, and we taught a few different grades in small groups over the course of a few weeks, different techniques. So we were teaching them different techniques like painting and pastel techniques, drawing techniques, and collage techniques all together. Um, so this turned it into a multimedia sort of mural. Next, I think there's some close-ups maybe of the, well, this was another mural. It's not the same one, but this is another type of mural that I do with some kids, usually when we have like a little bit less time. And what I can do is I'll start with a bit of an idea with a theme. Like this one, for instance, was the theme of the Great Tree of Peace and how the roots spread out from the Great Tree of Peace. And if you could find the ends of the roots, you can follow it back and like have shelter underneath the tree. And it's a story I like to tell them, and it's a subject matter that I love to share because if you look at the flag of Montreal, well, they've added the Tree of Peace right in the middle of the flag of Montreal, so it's very much still there in our culture is like very much integrated. It has always been part of Montreal. So I think it's great for them to know this and to realize, where all these symbols come from. So it's inclusive and wonderful. Next slide. Okay, so here's some of the kids with the mural over in the Chateauguay School. It was St. Willibrord School, and we had a bunch of kids working on this one. So this is sort of the zoom out, and this is how it ended up. And it just turned out so beautiful. I really can't stop looking at it, it's like I wish I could see it every day just because the way it turned out was just so amazing. Because with every class that we did with them, showing them a different type of technique, whether it be decoupage or painting or pastels, we always had a story that went along with it. We were talking about the clan systems in our communities and how we still use them to this day. And I have this reoccurring theme of trees and a lot of the work that I bring to schools, just because they're so meaningful and have hold so many different stories, like not only just our family trees and everything, but the different types of families that we do have, and sheltering under this tree together, and the unity of the world and the universe and all of creation. These are the kind of reoccurring themes that I like to use in my projects with the kids. Next slide. Out here once again, there's another close up of of the project. You can see a lot of this was so neat because I had never done collage before, and the other artist that I was working with was really into this type of artwork. And we had, when we were first sourcing out the materials for this project, one of the things we sourced was a huge crate full of old National Geographic magazines. So and that came in on the day that we did collage. We were all looking for yellow pictures, and so that we could do that yellow part of the you can see, I don't know if you can see it there, but so we were having them cut out faces and things that represented people in different types of cultures, and they turn into the whole tree. And for the roots, we had them do kind of like fancy lettering. So we were working with crayons and paint and pastel, and inventing different types of word art there in the roots that sort of represents everybody working together towards peace. And then we had, you can see how there's like little footprints and things. Those are the footprints of the clans. We had a big day where we were talking about clans. And then, okay, at the top of the tree in this mural, there's actually a really big, there's an eagle, and each child had designed their own feather to put on this eagle. And in our legends, the eagle represents the creator, which is the eagle represents his eyes and how he looks over everybody to protect everyone and make sure everything is peaceful.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to show the eagle.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can see it there a little bit. So yeah, okay. And there we are doing another element of the mural, probably doing a design. I think we were designing our feathers because we everybody wanted to. I give them a lot of I try to give them a lot of leeway when we're doing a type of artwork like this. I'll give them like um, basic guidelines, but the idea is I really want them to learn from the actual materials that we're using and that it comes from them. You know what I mean? I try not to give them so much direction that it really stifles them because it's more important for us, I think, in these class experiences that it opens up a conversation, it gets us to know each other and to feel comfortable around each other to be able to talk about things like what does our culture bring to the table. So yeah, that's creativity is a really big important part, and so is having fun for me because I think it's even if you go away with maybe a project that is kind of falling apart, you had a good time doing it, or and you learned something too. So I always try to stay positive that way. Next slide. Oh, this is one of the other things that I like to do when I have limited time with the kids is I show them how to do traditional pottery. And we usually use air dry clay so that we can actually make the pot in over the course of 3 periods. So here we're all learning how to do pinch pots and the old fashioned um, Paleolithic sort of doing the coils on the pot and to sort of make little miniature replicas of pots that we used to make hundreds of years ago here in the St. Lawrence River Valley. This is a type of pottery that we still find broken pieces of, shards, and these are the type of pottery pieces that we would find if we were digging in Montreal, like when we were digging around doing the renovations on Peel Street, and the city workers were always finding um, like old evidence of a community having lived there before. Right there in Montreal, they found an old Iroquoian village. And a lot of the remains left over that had just been built over by the city, and this would have otherwise have been absolutely lost to history. Um, but then the artist comes along, and I think it's always the artist's job to pick up on these things to make a point of showing showing what's I guess just having sort of like a point of view on things that are being rediscovered for our community and for the city of Montreal, to bring that to light, to sort of reappropriate that in the city, to not be ashamed of it, to promote it even. Well, not promote it, that's not the right word, but definitely to not bury it, definitely to have this cultural voice heard. And every time I think there happens to be an opportunity to do this, um, and there has been a lot more because of truth and reconciliation, more people are stepping up to take that space and to tell these stories and to remind people that there are things that happen in the past, and there's good things and there's bad things, and we need to take it all into consideration. And this is a living culture, and we're still creating, and we're always going to be here. So yeah, these are the things that we try to carry on in our classes. Next slide. Oh, here we are again at McGill with some of my older sculptors. And this was a little bit after we had the opening of the Peel Street project, which was a series of bronze spheres that starts at the beginning of Peel Street and goes all the way up the mountains. So there's 11 stations of groupings of spheres that are actually urban furniture. Really, you can actually sit on these sculptures, but they also tell a story, and they speak of the dialogue between the Indigenous community that was already on Montreal and the newcomers, the new arrivals. So from the beginning of the Peel Street, there's like different little stories that are told at each couple of blocks. There's stories about the medicines that we use and we still use today, in conjunction with it's like our medicines. The dialogue would be, I would have like our illustrations of our medicines, our traditional medicines, on one sphere, and then my partner, artist Kira Ravenko from Montreal, would do the newcomers sort of version. So their version of agriculture would be more from the viewpoint of coming to a new world and having to rediscover how, what was edible and everything, and how to grow food in this new country, and how we work together with the Indigenous people to learn how to do new things and how to survive. And so there's different little groupings like that, little conversations that go on that you're invited to come and sit down at with this piece of art, at different points going up the mountain. One of them, one of the groupings is also about culture and education, and so my sphere was about um, or our oral traditions and storytelling and things that we did during the long winter nights. We would be indoors in our long houses, and we would be telling stories around the fire, and that's how we would learn all of our um, our Thanksgiving addresses and our stories and our history is just by retelling it, um, time after time, just using our voices. And Kira's sphere right next to mine, and this happened. These particular spheres happened to be like right across from the um, library. So it was kind of, it kind of spoke about the space to the area. Kira's sphere was racks and racks of books, like in an old library. So it was just shelves upon shelves of books. So it gave us the opportunity to play with these ideas and to create these dialogues on our sculptures. But that's a whole other story. The kids at McGill is that, before you do a sculptural project like that, you have to start off with a maquette, which is kind of like a scaled down version, so that you can show it to people and explain to them, this is what I want to do. So we had our workshops, kind of around developing ideas and concepts of our own spheres, which we did with the styrofoam balls and the clay, just in sort of like a scaled down version of what we the same thing that we did on the Peel Street project, but just like kind of like miniatured a bit more. But we did um, kind of the same process of coming up with an idea and doing the maquette and having a storyboard and outlining our ideas and being able to justify why we wanted to put certain elements into, and that whole thing. And I think that we had a lot of fun during those creative classes too. On the right, some of the students that, from McGill, that were working in the sphere of fixing broken artwork. I forget how to call that. I guess curating and re. Um, okay, there's a word for it, but I can't think of what it is. One of the pieces that I was showing at the university was broken, so I brought it in for them, and I said, "Look, I have this broken piece. I know you guys are not rehabilitating, but I can't think of the word.
Restore.
Fixing. What's that?
Restoring.
That's it. Restoring artwork. So we all got together and we restored this piece of broken sculpture that I had, which eventually went to be housed in the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Montreal. So it's, you can all look at it now and say, McGill students helped me with that one. Next slide. That might have been the last slide. I'm not sure. Okay, that's
Yeah.
one of my the beadworking class in the background, and I'm just taking pictures. Next slide.
Well, I think that might be it. Is that it? Yeah, that's
That's
it.
it. Okay, I think I talked forever. If anybody has
Well,
any questions, feel free.
that was excellent. I actually did see a CBC News clip around the Peel Street walk. I haven't not done it yet, but I'm going to go discover it in person, and I will send that with everyone with the resources after. That was excellent. Does anyone have a question? Well, I get excited when I hear these things because it just makes me wish I was a student and like sitting in on your classes. Because it was, I mean, I love all the things about working with your hands and then the conversations that happen when you're working with your hands, but then the type of conversations you're saying, how you're helping lead kids towards, understanding history and clans. And it sounds like a great way to learn because it's so important for kids to be like creating art, but also hearing where the art practices would come from and what they could mean, the signifiers. So I love that, the way of
Mhm.
learning. That's the thing I love most when I hear those things. Well, thank you. Thank you, MC Snow. That was excellent. I really appreciate it. Um, I'm going
Yeah,
to
I
invite
appreciate
Robin.
you asking me to be here.
Thank you. I was going to invite Robin to speak next because you have had MC Snow in your school. Just
Yes.
we were talking about maybe you introducing, how that fits into like the goals of your school and then how it comes to be, what kind of work
Yes,
it does maybe.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just a heads up, I'm in like the daycare office, so when a parent rings the door, you might hear it. So sorry in advance. Hi, my name is Robin. I work for the New Frontier School Board, so I'm a CLC. I have three schools. I have Galt Institute, Ormstown Elementary, and Howick Elementary. So they're all elementary schools. So yeah, MC Snow and myself have worked together for the last 2 years. Um, what I do is I do a lot of recreation in my schools. Um, it's in my action plan, which is also very tied into the educational project um, for all three of my schools. So the most common thing that I saw was a very elevated stress and anxiety in our students. So recreation programming is like an area focused in my action plan. And I really try to make this very diverse. So recreation and leisure activities it can be like a multitude of same things. So like, mix of different kinds of art, physical sport activities, STEAM activities, like science, technology, engineering, art and mathematics, and as well as the Indigenous culture. So, in my recreation programming, for example, option clubs, which is a multitude of different activities for students that they get involved in while the teachers are out doing professional development. Um, so an example would be Indigenous arts and culture or Indigenous arts and dancing. So that's where MC Snow would come in. And he works with our students on what he had presented, right? Types of, sewing, beading, making, um, different objects like moccasins, and he hasn't done that specifically with their students, but what he brings is he's got a large repertoire. And I really personally, I always try to include Indigenous arts and culture in my schools because I felt when I was a student when I was in elementary school and then in high school that I felt I didn't get enough understanding and history and knowledge about the Indigenous culture, unfortunately. And I want to take this opportunity as much as I can to provide that for the students. And what was mentioned just a few minutes ago was that, having that dialogue with an Indigenous leader, not just reading it in the books, but more like, you're doing something that's very different, and then you're having that dialogue with the leader, and you're learning about their ways, and you're learning about, their way of life and their views, and the certain activities that they do, like the powwow, the dancing, the beading, I think it's really important. I feel like it's more impactful for the students versus just reading it in a book. So MC Snow, for the last 2 years, he's been providing that for our students. Um, and yeah, we might have some art classes, but Indigenous arts, I feel like it's different because you're getting that interaction, that one-on-one. You're learning something completely new. So yeah, he's been great. I actually found MC Snow through my CLC team. So we're a team of four, and I was looking for an Indigenous leader and or facilitator, and I got a word of mouth, and that's how I got MC Snow. But I know recently we can go through the Artist Inspire grant, which is I didn't know he was part of, which is great. So you can use the Artist Inspire grant for MC Snow. And my principals, we didn't use the Artist Inspire grant for him specifically this year. We actually My administration applied on the measure. I have to bring it up. What's the measure for the Indigenous? I'm gonna try and find it, but it's a measure that is thankfully the government did not cut. But my principals applied on that to use for MC Snow for some of our projects like option clubs, which is fits into my recreation programming, the area focus on my action plan. So
That's
really,
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's great to know because I have been asking a lot of people if that Mizil is still in place. Um,
Mhm.
I don't remember the exact number of it, like 150,
Yeah, I forgot the number
but
too. It's like 15 something, 60 something.
yeah. But the thing is, it really is a concern because there have been these cuts this year, and I had not heard of anyone actually confirming yet whether or not they had that Mizil. So I'm glad to hear it's still there.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it might have closed though, or it's going to be closing this month. I think it closes
okay.
in February.
So the principals would know that, I'm sure, but I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear it. Yeah, so it's good to hear that, it was connecting into your objectives and your goals in your schools around mental health and wellness and that getting kids like engaged like in art as a way for, helping them de-stress and then also that it tied into your goals around, bringing in like Indigenous perspective into the school. So that's good you on both goals that you were able to do that for your CLC and then I guess it's for the school as well. And I'm sure that's also an objective coming from the school board. So it's always nice to hear. Like we often I live in the kind of world of bureaucracy sometimes, filling out paperwork, but I'm always grateful to hear what happens with the kids in the schools in these moments where they have like opportunities to meet artists and hear stories that they should know about the land that they're on. So thank you, MC
yeah.
Snow, and thank you, Robin. Does anyone have any questions before we move to the next presentation? Oh, Stacy just said it's Mesure 15061 and 15062, which we will send out in the email as well if anyone wants to see if that can happen for their school.
Awesome. So I guess if there's no questions, or we'll give you time, you can always write in the chat too. I'm going to present Mariah, who is from Gitaganzivi, Algonquin First Nation, and I had the amazing pleasure of seeing you at the Performing Arts Festival last year. That's hosted by Central Quebec School Board, and you opened the festival and you did this amazing hoop dance, and then I was really excited because we just by happened had the same hotel and I got to see you at checkout and talk about the powwow and Kitaganzibi and everything. So I'm very happy that you're here today to share with us a bit more about your art. So miigwech for joining us, and I'll let you present yourself and your work.
Miigwech for asking me to be a part of today. Kwekakanawig, Mara Miigwans, Indigenous Cause, Kitiganzi, Bing Anishinaabeg, Ndonjaba, Makwit, and Dodem. Hello, everyone. My name is Mariah Miigwans. I'm Algonquin First Nation from Kitigan-Zibi, and I'm part of the Bear Clan. I wanted to introduce you today in the Algonquin language, just because a lot of where we were going with this conversation, it's really important to continue to acknowledge our Indigenous artists and storytellers, um, because there's so much that we can learn from it, from uh, technique to lifestyle to how do we manage through, and also just so much more to land-based teachings and knowledge, and um, even like same collected feelings and pain, and stories of like resilience and stuff. I don't really like to use that word resilience because it kind of it puts that onus that it was a choice, that we had to be this strong and that we had to continue to go through these things. Whereas in true history, we know that's not the case. And we're strong because we're strong. And so there's many things that can go into these conversations. I also want to acknowledge that I'm calling in today from Kitigan-Zibi, from home. It's very important to also acknowledge that the places that we're coming from, even for myself as an Indigenous person, because um, we live in a very fast life, and we're often very disconnected with where we are and where we're going, and uh, what we're doing. So a big teaching that we get from our knowledge keepers and even our young people is, we need to know where we're coming from to know where we're going. Um, so I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I do many things, and I really try to tie a lot of the work together. I have a various background of education, from policing to Indigenous community service to 3D printing and laser engraving to sewing to heat press making and vinyl and all of that stuff, to also land-based things, quill work, tufting, making baskets. And a part of learning all of those techniques has been to how to harvest. So properly going there out on the land, um, and doing that in a good way while also giving thanks, not just going out there and doing it. So taking that time to bring tobacco. Um, and so I teach a lot of workshops based on those kinds of things, from beading to sewing, quill work. The list goes on. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my pictures working to make a nice PowerPoint for you. But basically, the pictures that I wanted to share were mostly pictures of my family and really talking about where I come from. And knowing where I come from has really helped me to bring a lot of these skills and also to be able to facilitate in that good way. While also understanding that the other connections from my family. So learning what side of the river was what that my family came from. So my mother, her father was diagnosed with TB. He passed away when she was young. My mother was a day school survivor, and her mother married into reserve, so she got to gain status. And so from there, after my grandfather died, my mom was just kind of raised on reserve, too brown to be in town, but too white to be on reserve. My dad's side, He is both of his parents are both in Anishinaabe. However, his dad comes from the Fort Collonge area, and we have connections to Pembroke. And his mother, Martina, she is actually our oldest living community resident at this moment. She's 96 years old. She's a language speaker. Um, and she was removed from her home and brought here to Maniwaki. And that happened during the time when Maniwaki was becoming Maniwaki, and they wanted to make more hunting and fishing camps in Parc de la Vérandre. And so she was removed from her place of living up in Mishomis. That's what we called it back then, but it's near Basketong, and was brought here to Maniwaki. The reason why I talk about that is it's really important to know how much has happened within our families, um, and to really make it relevant, right? And we talk about this ideology that, oh, it happened such a long time ago. It didn't really happen a long time ago. My grandma's here. She's still very much alive. She was actually in palliative care last year, and this this can go more into my story. But she was really sick, and it's almost been a year, and she's off palliative care. And it's something that you never really hear of people going into palliative care and then coming out. So it's truly a miracle, and also just speaks to our beliefs and to um, our ways of being as an Anishinaabe. And so aside from all of the wonderful, beautiful workshops I get to do, from making baskets and tying all those connections, my favorite thing to do is dance. Dance for me is a lifestyle. Um, and I would rather be dancing than sitting in my office right now. So I'm actually employed as our language and cultural events coordinator here in our community, and I've been doing this job for 2 years. And I've been really trying to juggle and bring in all of those gaps, from the disconnection to land-based learning to bringing that to the next generation. And trying to focus that on my community while doing a lot of work on the outside. So I'm fairly busy, but being a hoop dancer, everything is holistic. And when we look at hoop dancing, we come back to a lot of the circle teachings and how everything has a cause and effect. And especially when we put ourselves in a situation or in the circle, yes, we're a part of that creation, but how are we being a part of that creation? And so when I bring these workshops to the students, I talk a lot about that connection to the land, um, but also that body awareness, right? How do they feel about themselves? We know anxiety and depression is a huge thing that's just growing, um, and we know that for some of our youth, they struggle to talk. Sometimes it's easier to just move, right? And through a lot of work, we've come to understand that through pain and suffering, we know the effects that it has on the body. So I really try to bring a lot of those connections to the students, while also bringing a lot of the teachings of how do you affect an environment that you're in. So everybody, like, I'll open up with a hoop dance, um, and it all depend on how much time we have, what's the resources, and all those kinds of things, and what does the community or the school want. Most times it's just a performance and we just talk about it. Sometimes I get the opportunity where we can actually do the second part for hands-on. And that's what I got to do at PAF, where PAF really got to, and I really got to say, I appreciate our relationship because they've really stepped up into assisting in buying all the material so that I can have all the hoops to be able to assist with everybody. To be able to have them to take these things and put it into play. How does it put that, like, am I making sense? I feel like yeah. Um, and so from there, they'll take that hoop and they'll try to make that hoop a part of them. And they understand that if they swing their hoop around their body, well, this is all the space that they have. And if they're hitting the person next to them, well, they're too close. Or they're too close, or whatever that relationship is looking like. And sometimes we're in a room where you can't move, right? Because that's all the room you have in that room. So it's really teaching them to cope in certain situations. And I really try to bring a lot of lifestyle teachings to it. Because in life, there's many things that will happen where we don't have control of. Right. And so like that hoop, it's gonna spin out, it's gonna break apart, it's gonna do whatever it wants to do. Right. But how are you gonna manage? How are you making that experience become a part of you and not letting that experience define you? Um, so there's so many ways that this can be brought to the general public, um, in a way that's healing. Um, I also make it really clear that when we're doing these workshops, of course, it depends on the protocol, right? So when working with non-Indigenous students, I make it very clear that, unfortunately, you can't be a hoop dancer, but you can be, you can see it now all on Instagram. They're doing like hoop movements. Those are things you can do, but you can't call yourself this. And so I really try to tie in a lot of those teachings, the giving thanks, the protocol, the tobacco, um, and just like how we make a lot of and then when we start developing because sorry, I feel like I'm getting all lost. Um, because hoop dancing, it's like a story, right? So you wouldn't start from putting all your hoops on and then finishing with one. I mean, you can, right? Maybe your story's backwards and that's okay. People have backward stories. But for the most part, you try to make a story that people can really grasp. And a part of that too comes with the teachings into how do you develop into being that person. And so every hoop kind of has a meaning, has a teaching, has a developmental stage. And now we're in a time where you see a lot of hoop dancers, right? And they got glow hoops, and you spin them, and they're all lighting up, and it's super cool and it's amazing. And I have no judgment, but I prefer, um, and coming back to these traditional ways of doing things because we're already living in a time where we're competing with technology, and well, I'm better than you, right? And because society teaches us we always have to be better. And so coming back to hoop dancing and the teachings of the circle, it teaches us how we're all equal. Nobody's ahead, nobody's behind. We're all here together, and it's that cause and effect. I feel like I spoke a lot. And I feel like there's also so much more that I'm missing with a lot of this. Um, but I do a lot. I have a passion for dancing. This year I'm actually currently working in trying to get back into dancing. Um, because it's something that I love to do. And as much as I also love my job and love helping the people, um, I've also learned that through this work that I love to do, it also helps the people too. And through a lot of this work, right, as we're trying to navigate, trying to include Indigenous ways of being and Indigenous learning, um, it's a really delicate state um, because of funding, policy, the structure. And so, if I could really choose any job in the world, um, I would love to dance all the time. Um, but I know that life isn't realistic. Um, and I was doing that for 13 years of my life. And that's also why I got a job because I had to think about, yes, I'm not that old, but I'm also not that young, and what is life going to be like when I'm 60? I'm sure I could probably dance, but, realistically, there's pension, there's all of these other things. Um, and so this is where we think of growth, other goals, and how do we give back. And my big dream is to eventually build a dance studio, but I know that a lot of this comes through a lot of conversations like these, networking like these, connections, finding and putting yourself with people who support you. And that's been my biggest um, eye opener this year um, because I've always surrounded myself with people I've been comfortable with. Um, but it's always the same cause and effect, right? So it's like, again, coming back to hoop dancing and how that hoop keeps moving. Um, so yeah, I'm very grateful to meet you all. I don't have a website, but somebody has my contact there. I would love to come to any one of your schools, come meet all of your students. It's really nice to see MC today and hear all of your wonderful work. I just see about it on Facebook, so it's nice to actually hear about the work that you're doing. And keep that up because we need more of us, especially like in our neck of the woods. So, Kachimigwech, and thank you all for listening.
You're good, Shreya. You're both sharing your work, and all I'm thinking is, I don't come from an arts background, and there's so much history, there's so much social emotional learning, there's so much teaching about boundaries and identity and all these other things that we talk about in education and community, all through the arts. And it's just like, that's why we're here, I guess, to appreciate it and find different ways to bring it into our schools. Um, Sylvia, um, you want to share a bit? You want to introduce yourself too?
First of all, miigwech for sharing, Mariah, and Niawe, MC Snow for what you shared also. Really inspiring. I come from both an embroidery and a dancing people. And so the background is actually the village where I'm from in Poland, but I lived in Montreal for most of my life. I was brought here with my parents as a child. And for the past 14 years, I've been working with the Cree School Board, working with the James Bay Cree on different educational initiatives that are that like have as the goal of decolonizing and indigenizing their curriculum, which is something that they have a lot of control over up in James Bay. And I'm actually having supper tonight with Mona Toley from Kitigan Zibi, my friend and colleague, because she's in town and she's someone that I actually learned a lot from because she's an educator, an Indigenous educator, and I learned a lot from listening to her and from the different sources that she was able to point me towards. So I'm coming to you, I'm speaking to you today as like a non-Indigenous person who really cares about bringing Indigenous understanding and ways of knowing into the classroom to make that something that's part of learning, a normal part of learning, and not just a guest in the classroom. So I think it's amazing to have guests, have Indigenous guests come in. I think that's the way. the way is to have Indigenous people in the classroom. But also, if you're a non-Indigenous educator, you're not just going to be waiting for the guests and only putting all that pressure on the guests to do all the heavy lifting. And what is some lifting that you can do in your practice? So I'm here just for like the next, couple minutes just to share with you something that you could start with or something that you could think about. And I am going to share my screen, but because I have the update of Zoom, you might have to look at the top of your screen and press on like to see my screen. So I'm gonna do that, and then we'll take a minute so everyone can see my screen. So if you don't see my screen, you're going to have to click on my screen. And if you're on a phone, MC, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all because it'll be small. So at the top there should be like some tabs, and if you click on one, you should be looking at my screen. And I have up on there a document that was produced by FINEC, which is the First Nations Education Council, and an organization in Wendake, and also the Chakapish Institute. And they put together something called Competency 15. I don't know if you're aware of this document. It was put out a couple of years ago. But the story behind it is that the Ministry of Education of Quebec was trying to create teacher competencies. Well, it was trying. It created teacher competencies, and it wanted to have as one of the competencies something about Indigenous education. And I have a lot of colleagues from Cree School Board who were actually part of that committee that was working on that. And at the last minute, the ministry decided that they were not going to do that. They were not going to put in the Indigenous competency into the official teacher competencies that it put out. But the FNEC and the Chakapish Institute and their partners said, well, we're gonna do that anyway. We're gonna put out this competency called Competency 15, which is to value and promote Indigenous knowledge, worldviews, cultures, and history. We're actually going to put this out. We're going to publish it, and we're going to have it available to people. So for the people that are interested, it became available, and so we understood more what Indigenous educators were asking us to do. So we can look at this as a blueprint of what it is that Indigenous educators are asking the non-Indigenous educators of Quebec to do. We have a blueprint. They've told us. So one of the things they've said is to find ways to incorporate holistic lifelong learning. Both Mariah and MC Snow talked about that. So something that's holistic is something that incorporates a lot of different things, and it speaks to the whole child. So oftentimes in Western education, we have like this picture of like a brain walking into the classroom, and we put stuff into the brain, right? But it's a whole child that walks into the classroom. And usually we're talking about something that's like a circularity or something that's whole. And I'm not going to read the whole thing for you there, just the highlighted part. Another thing that oh, sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. I have too many screens. And another thing that they point out in Competency 15 document is that there are truth and reconciliation calls to action, and two of those are specific to education, and one of them is to educate teachers on how to integrate Indigenous knowledge and teaching methods into classrooms. So it's not enough to talk about residential schools and residential school survivors. It's not enough just to talk about the reserve system or the Indian Act. Those are just about, right? As though that was something separate and theoretical. We have to find ways of using the ways of knowing in our classrooms to make them normalized, and so that they're just part of our worldview. In order to do this, I made a tool, just a small tool that is a graphic organizer that you could use with students. It's based on a graphic organizer that we created for Cree School Board to do other things, but I'm sharing it with you here. And if you're interested in learning more about the medicine wheel, because this tool is based on a medicine wheel, I invite you to watch this 25-minute video where you have an elder giving a medicine wheel teaching. So I'm not going to give you a medicine wheel teaching. But I know that any of your guests who are coming into the classroom will probably have their own knowledge of medicine wheel, and that they can share with you. But in short, once you have acquired some medicine wheel knowledge, you can go ahead and use that framing, that holistic framing with your students, especially if your students are Indigenous, because they will have already heard some of these teachings, and you bringing those into the classroom in a normal way will will make them feel seen. They will recognize their own way of looking at the world in your classroom. So, does everyone know what a medicine wheel is? You can say no in the chat if you don't, or you can say yes in the chat. A medicine wheel, just without giving it as a teaching, but just giving my own knowledge of it. The medicine wheel is a holistic tool of understanding the world and our place in it. It is used for multiple different you can use it for life stages. You can use it for cardinal points. It is something that is whole, and in it lives the worldview of many Indigenous nations that live on this territory. So even though each nation will have their own specific perspective on a medicine wheel, all across Turtle Island, you will have medicine wheel teachings, and the medicine wheel will be used as a way to describe reality, describe what our purpose is, and just a way of seeing yourself. So I'm only using a small part of the medicine wheel teaching, which is the way to look at a human being. So a human being is made up um, of your body, your mind, your heart, and your spirit. And your body, that's your physicality, your physical sphere, including your senses. And the mind, well, that's the thoughts and the intellectual aspect of a human being. And the heart is how you feel and the relationships you have with people, and the feelings you have. And the spirit is something bigger than yourself. It's your life essence. It's the way that you're connected to something that's bigger than just yourself. And we, each of us, because we are whole people, we arrive with that reality. We are not just a body. We are not just a brain. We are all of these things. We're all four of these dimensions together. And so, if you're going to be appreciating art, especially Indigenous art, appreciation is one of the competencies that is involved in all four arts. So, all four arts have appreciation. And this is elementary and secondary. So you appreciate works of art in elementary, you appreciate images in secondary. You do the same thing with musical works. That's also true for choreo, like for dances. So this is part of the QEP. It's part of the the program that you're teaching. Appreciating is part of the program. And of course, dramatic works, appreciating dramatic works, personal productions, and those of classmates. So you'll notice that personal productions and those of classmates are part of appreciation in elementary, meaning that the things that you make and the things that you're making in concert with your friends, or the things that you're making because you have a guest artist, those are things that you can then also appreciate. And that would be a competency that you can then evaluate. And what better way to do that is if not to give it like a holistic lens, to put a holistic lens on your experience. So I made this graphic organizer based on the work that I've done for Cree School Board. And you would start in the east. So this is actually based on not the Cree. This is not the Cree medicine wheel, because the Cree medicine wheel has the parts of the person in a different order. And that's something else that I learned, that different nations will put the different parts in a different order. And this one is actually based on the one that I got from Drew Apache McDougall, who is also from Kitigan-Zibi. So that's the medicine wheel that I'm working with. And so you would ask yourself as a learner, as a young person, as you're engaging in art, as you're making art, or as you're appreciating other people's art. So let's say you were shown some stuff about hoop dancing, but then you were shown an actual hoop dance. You would ask yourself, how does this piece or artist connect to my body? So what did I see? What parts of my body were engaged or involved? And then the student would either say it out loud, you could do this out loud, or they could write it out. And then how does this piece connect to my mind? What do I think about it? What questions do I have for the artist, or what questions do I have in general? So, engaging their intellect. And then how does this piece or this artist connect to my heart? How does this make me feel? How is this related to something or someone that I know? So getting that relationship aspect in. And then spirit, how does this piece or this artist connect to my spirit? How does this connect me and us to something bigger than ourselves? And how does this connect us all? Right? Because the spirit realm is the way that we are all connected in a higher way, in like a higher way than just physically being close to each other. So there's a small little, on the side of this medicine wheel, there's a small little description. So if this is new to you, you can read that description. It's also a way to give that description to students that is very simple. The medicine wheel is a way that many Indigenous peoples understand life. It teaches that everything is connected and that balance helps us to stay well. The wheel is a circle divided into 4 parts. These parts can represent the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 parts of a person's body, mind, heart, and spirit. The medicine wheel is holistic. It reminds us that we are more than just our thoughts. We have bodies, feelings, and a spirit. And when one part is out of balance, the others feel it too. The medicine wheel teaches us to care for our whole self and to respect our connection to people, the land, and all living things. So this is an example of the way that you can bring Indigenous ways of knowing into the classroom and not just facts about Indigenous people. So a lot of the times in school, the curriculum will give us facts about Indigenous people. Here's where they lived. Here's where they moved to. This is who they were allied with. This is how, they were killed by diseases. This is, and these are just facts about them. They don't really talk to the holistic experience of what it is to be Indigenous. And so this is one way to bring maybe indigeneity into the classroom, especially when you're appreciating an artist who is Indigenous or appreciating Indigenous art. It's a way of connecting in a good way, with a worldview that might be new to some of the kids, and in the hopes that in the future, this worldview will be a shared worldview by everyone, right? That it won't be something different, and specific to only Indigenous people, that it will be part of, a bit like the way New Zealanders have haka in their schools, which, by the way, blows me away every time I think of that. If you go to school in New Zealand, it doesn't matter whether you're Indigenous or not Indigenous, you will learn to haka. That will be part of your curriculum, and that's amazing and incredible. So that's where I hope we're headed to, so that Indigenous culture is appreciated in our schools as much as it should be. Thank you. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
It's not really a question. I guess it's more of a comment. As someone being from the Anishinaabe territory, and just thinking of a lot of this work, I'm like, how do I say this in a way that's appropriate? I guess the best way I could say this would be, before implementing this way of teaching and mindset with the medicine wheel, finding support from the local communities and knowledge keepers in your area first before doing it.
I agree.
Because
Yeah.
it could come off and be seen very offensive, and that a very white savior perspective. Whereas I know from right off the hop that's not the intention, but some communities might seem it as harmful. So Sylvia, you got that connection, you've got your okay. I love how you definitely put all of this and you worked really hard and just making sure that every thought was thought about in a really good, kind way. So I want to say thank you for that and for all of the work that you're doing, in honoring the Cree Nation. right? And there's a lot of history, right, and differences when it comes from up there to down here and
Yes.
what's happening, and it's still ongoing. But that's just my one comment, my one suggestion, and just um, how do we implement these teachings? And it's just really getting that support, the okay from those Indigenous partners that you are or possibly could be working with. And if you don't have any, um, then work on trying to get some.
Yes.
I'm here, MC's
Yeah.
here. That's two if you don't have any. And Turtle Island might seem very big, but in Native communities, it's actually really small. And we literally know everybody. And if we don't know somebody, somebody knows someone, then we can find somebody who's appropriate to bring whatever it is that you're asking for to your school. So that's all I have to say. And
And yeah,
Kichimigwech, Sylvia, I
thank
printed
you.
out your thing here.
Thank you for that précision, because absolutely I would not walk in with this, right? But I would ask someone who I was already in relationship with to come into my classroom to give a teaching, right? That's why I said that I'm not giving a teaching, I'm showing a way, but it would have to come with a teaching first, right? The students would have to understand what they were doing. But once that was established, then it could be a regular practice that is done even when the person who did the teaching, whether it's an elder or a knowledge keeper, even when they're not with us. So even once they leave the classroom, their knowledge stays in the classroom. The knowledge of the medicine wheel and how we might use that will stay. But absolutely, you have to have someone come in and and give their perspective on it, and that they have to be Indigenous.
One
Yeah.
more thing to add. Um, when we move into this way of thinking, it really turns into a harm reduction piece of framework because you're being inclusive to every part of that person's body, right? So mind, body, spirit, um, and the emotional, right? Um, yeah, I can't highlight this enough. I really loved how you put this. Um, and I really want to meet you, so I hope that we can arrange this.
Yeah, maybe we have dinner
Um,
with Mona and you and me if you're ever in Montreal. That would be amazing.
let's do that again.
Yeah.
Kichimigwech, and I have no words. Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
keep doing the amazing work
Thank
for all of us.
you. Thank you. I mean, I think that you are doing amazing work and we're just sort of piggybacking on it, but fine. Thank you, everybody. I think we're out of time, but I'm going to
Thank
give
you,
the
everyone. Thank you.